Hey students, it's John. Today we're actually starting a new series called The Greatest Commands, where we're going to be flipping through this book and kind of identifying a few commands that God has given us to follow Him and to trust Him. And when you think about commands, usually you think of something negative, something commanding you to do something, telling you, even though you don't want to. Fun fact about the Bible, there are actually around 1,050 commands in the New Testament. And that's kind of a lot. That can be overwhelming. Especially when it comes to us wanting to be faithful. We want to follow all of the commands, we want to trust God, but yet at the same time, it just feels like, how in the world can we do it? How can we be successful in trusting Jesus? Usually when you think about commands, what do you think of? Love God with all your heart, mind, body, soul, strength, and then love your neighbor as yourself. But we're actually not going to be talking about either of those two things. We're going to be talking about different ones. Commands are important that they can actually save our lives. I remember this one story. It wasn't a life or death story. When I was younger, maybe I was about like 7 years old, and my sister was 1 year older, so she was about 8. And somebody gifted us with this lamp. I don't really know why, FYI. Old lamps, terrible gift for people, but they gave it to us, and my grandma told us, whatever you do not plug in that lamp. And so me being, innocent, trusting, following the rules, how I am, I chose not to. But my sister, on the other hand, the rebel, she was like, hey, we should plug this in. I was like, no, we shouldn't. It sounds like a terrible idea. And she was like, yeah, we should. And then I was like, okay, then we should. And so we decided to plug in this lamp. And right when we plugged it in, it short-circuited the whole house and all the lights went off. And I could hear my grandma running to our room, yelling at us and asking, did you plug in that lamp? And then I started crying and we got yelled at and we got in trouble. But following commands are important, and they're important because they can help us and they can heal us. Usually when we think about God's commands, we think, oh, He doesn't want us to have any fun, or oh, He's a prude, or oh, He just doesn't get it. But God actually gives us commands to give us freedom and to give us life. And as you know, there's a dichotomy of what you hear in the world versus what the Bible says and what the Bible commands, right? For example, just one quick one. The world tells you, do whatever you want for you and yourself. Whatever it is to get ahead, whatever it is to move forward, do that. But what the Bible says is carry each other's burdens, love one another, and put others above yourselves. And those two things you would think are opposites, and they are. And so you have to choose, am I going to choose the world's way or am I going to choose God's way? And we found out time and time again that actually it's more blessed to give than to receive. You just feel better when you're giving gifts than when you're receiving things. It's just how we were wired and how we were created. So when God says carry each other's burdens, He's really saying, like, that's actually going to help you if you're caring for others instead of selfishly thinking about yourself. And our theme verse for our whole series is Jeremiah 31:33. And we're going to unpack this next week, so I'm not really going to hang out in it too much today. It says this is the covenant I will make with the people of Israel. After that time, declares the Lord, I will put my law in their minds and write it on their heart. I will be their God and they will be my people. When you think about commands, when was the first time that God gave us or His people commands to follow? Go ahead and think about it. If you guessed the 10 commandments, right, the tablets that He wrote the commandments on, you're right. And those are one time where God gave people commands and which were to follow. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip all the way back to the Old Testament and talk about one of those 10 commandments. And the 10 commandments we're going to talk about today is God has commanded us to rest. It's important to know that rest is different than resting in the Lord. Whenever Sarah takes a nap here at home and she wakes up, she always says this phrase that it was great resting in the Lord, right? That's what she calls her naps. It's just resting in the Lord, which is true. And so we're going to unpack that. We're going to talk about what it means to be lazy and what does it mean to really rest in God. Is that a thing? Or is it not a thing? We're going to talk about biblically what that is. If you're thinking, why should I listen to this message on rest when all I have been doing is resting? I want to encourage you and challenge you to stick with us, and you're going to learn something, because resting is different than resting in the Lord. So let's learn how to rest in the Lord in everything that we do and be built up. Exodus chapter 20 verses 8 through 11 say this. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son nor your daughter nor your male or female servants, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in the days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on the seventh day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath and made it holy. So God's command for you and me is to rest. In those verses, we know that God has called us to rest. So today we're going to talk about 3 quick points of what rest means, what it doesn't mean, and then we're going to talk about how exactly do we rest in the Lord, starting tonight, starting tomorrow. How do we do that? And so the first thing that I want to remind us is rest inherently is important and it's good for our bodies, and God commands it. And the rest of doing nothing, kind of unplugging for a little bit. 1 Kings chapter 19 verses 3 through 5 say this: Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat under it, and prayed that he might die. So Elijah was having such a rough day. All he wanted to do was just die. I don't know about you. Have you ever just felt overwhelmed? We're tired or exhausted. We're just kind of done for the day. I think that's where Elijah was at this point. And it goes on and he tells God this: I have had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. Sometimes it's good to just fall asleep or to eat a snack. God has commanded us to rest our bodies. He didn't create us to be Energizer bunnies. God didn't design us for that. He didn't create us for that. Oftentimes I think, imagine how much in this world I can do if I just didn't sleep for 6 to 8 hours a day. I can do so much. But God designed us to rest because he knows we need to be refueled and refilled every single day. So if you're going 100 miles an hour, stop. Rest, relax, let your body catch up to how fast you're going. This past week on Thursday, I painted the fence in front of my house. Shout out Miles, thanks for coming by and helping. So him and I painted the fence for about 2 hours. He then left. He was too tired, I guess. And then I had a phone call with a friend for about an hour. And then after that, I then painted for another hour and a half. So it was kind of a long day. I was kind of exhausted physically. It was hot outside. I was exhausted emotionally because I was talking with my friend for an hour and he was just kind of unloading things that's going on in his life. And I'm so glad I was able to be there for him. And then I went back to painting just to finish the first coat. And then after that, all of that, I had paint everywhere on me because I'm not a great painter. I get more paint on me than I do on the thing I'm painting. And so then I had to clean up. And all I wanted to do for the rest of the day was nothing. And I think it was okay that I chose to do nothing. I mean, still, I did maybe things that I shouldn't have done, but I decided to rest that day, even though there were things that I knew I needed to do. But I decided that I'm going to rest after taking on that big job. And I think it's the same thing for you and me. God has commanded us to rest. A few ways that I find rest. One, as you guys know, I play Pokemon Go, shout out. I just find rest in it. It's just a way to unplug. Another way lately that I've been finding rest is on Netflix. I've been watching this show called Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is really great. I watched it many years ago, and it's kind of cool to see again. But what's interesting about it is when I wake up after I get ready for my day, I'll kind of watch a few episodes and unplug a little bit and just do nothing with my brain, which is good sometimes. And so I find rest in doing that. So whatever kind of you find rest in, whether it's walks or journaling, do those things and find rest and let your body refuel. That's healthy and that's important, but don't do things that are actually not fueling your body and are harming your body. The second thing that I want to talk about today is identifying what's being lazy and what's resting. There are 2 verses I want to talk about in the book of Proverbs. The first verse is Proverbs 26:15, and it says this: a sluggard buries his hand in the dish. He is too lazy to bring it back to his mouth. I don't know about you, but are you in charge of a specific chore, like maybe taking out the trash? Instead of taking out the trash when you need to, you take out the trash, you wait until like it's a mountain of trash before you take it out. Is that laziness or is that resting? And I say that one because that's actually what I do. I wait till the trash, and Sarah doesn't like it, I wait till it's like really full or high up in order to toss it. And that's just being lazy. So identify what's being lazy and what's resting. The second verse in Proverbs that I want to talk to you about is Proverbs chapter 26, verse 13. It says this: a sluggard says there's a lion in the road, a fierce lion roaming the streets. What that's talking about is excuses. And back in that day, there were not lions just hanging out in the street roaming, but when people had things to do, they would say, you know what, if I leave the house, what if a lion kills me? You know, what if this? What if that? What if this? We can't live our life with excuses. God has called us to action, to be representatives of who he is and what he has us for. So don't make excuses in your life and get things done, right? Rest, but identify when there are times of, hey, I'm actually not resting, I'm just being lazy, and I need to get up and I need to go. Whether that's waking up early, going to sleep earlier, being committed in the things you need to do, but resting in Jesus doesn't mean having your whole day doing nothing. The third thing that I want to talk about today is resting in Jesus. Matthew chapter 11, verses 18 through 20, some of my favorite verses say this: "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Resting in Jesus means following Jesus, going to him, talking to him, trusting him. That's with all of the things that we have going on. When your spiritual tank is empty, go to Jesus, right? He can carry you, and he wants to carry your burdens. In 1 Peter 5:7, it says this: "Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you." God cares for you, and he wants you to go to him. He wants you to rest in him and not in other things. So when you're exhausted, instead of your first automatic response being couch, Netflix, or food, friends, or social media, texting, let it be Jesus, then everything else. Go to the Lord. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. There's a right way to rest, and there's a wrong way to rest. Choose the right way. Choose to rest in Jesus and watch him be with you and heal you and comfort you and give you this peace that you otherwise wouldn't understand. 3 ways that we can rest in Jesus are the following. 1 is stop going 100 miles an hour. Right? We all do a lot, and we can fill up our time with a lot, but God didn't call us to do those things. We need to trust in him that the time that we have is valuable, and we're going to trust him and not go 100 miles an hour. Because when you go 100 miles an hour, you're missing a lot of things. So slow down, stop, and rest in who he is. The second way is to identify areas of laziness and correct those, right? If I'm being too lazy, I just need to correct those, and I need to rest. I need to rest in Jesus the right way. And the third way is this: instead of filling your rest time with things, fill it with Jesus. God has called us to rest. Come to me. Or you have 6 days of work, on the 7th rest, but rest in the Lord. Don't do anything on those days, and just trust in me. Spend time with me, and you will be filled. The Christian life is all about this like crazy dichotomy thing, right? More of Jesus actually means more rest, but less of Jesus and more stuff is less rest, right? Jesus has called us, come and die to self, and you find life. If you try to find your own life, you will actually lose it and you'll die. So trust in Jesus, trust his word, and trust his commands that he is for you, he is with you, and he wants you to find rest, but find rest the right way. By reading your Bible, by praying, by doing spiritual disciplines, by serving others, by caring for others, and know that God commands us these things because he loves us and he's for us and he's with us. Love you guys. Find rest in Jesus this week.